Good evening, everybody. Here we are again, talking about the inside of the foot and ankle. And let's talk about the big toe. That can sometimes be a pain point on the inside of the foot as well. But funny enough, some of the treatments or some of the treatments for this is similar to the other things that we discussed as far as where to start. And this is a good way to just kind of group them all so you guys get a little bit of an understanding of how to target this stuff. So, big toe. When it starts to kind of dive out, right? Like when my foot doesn't do it, but when your foot starts to kind of, where are we? There you go. So when your toe starts to kind of do that maneuver a little bit more, we'll just stick with the normal routine. For things that tend to be a problem on the inside of the foot, it's the starting point for treatment that can take care of a lot of things is very similar. That's why I'm just writing this book, because regionally, depending on where the pain point is in the inside of the foot, outside of the foot, the bottom of the foot, the back of the foot, a lot of times you can group the treatment, and as long as you kind of have a general idea of what the structure may be or where the structure is, you can hit the ground running, so to speak, in terms of getting better as you're trying to get along and get to your physician or get to your physical therapist. And hopefully you guys have learned by now that most of the time physicians can just offer you pain pills, injections, and surgery. Just hope you go to one that knows something about conservative management, because most of the time you're going towards a surgery if all you get are the pain pills and the injections. I'm sure you guys probably already know that, but it's worth putting out there. It's just kind of the way that the medical system is. They just kind of goes that way. I can go off on that, but anyway, big toe. So, like I mentioned before, the reason it tends to, there we go. The reason the big toe might end up going out in that direction, if you can see it, most of the time is because the foot, and there's this word again, the foot pronates a little more excessively than it should. Or people walk with their feet kind of toed out a little bit more again, because as you toe out a little bit, I mean, it could be excessive, but if you toe out a little bit, you can see as you come over your toe, your big toe kind of starts to crowd your smaller toes. And you end up, particularly when you're running, as the years tick by and as the decades tick by, you might get some pain. And depending on if you, a number of things. So if you have shoes that are a little bit too old, or shoes that are neutral when you really need more of a stability shoe, or you're maybe a little bit larger person and you need actually a pretty good motion control shoe, or you started to do more distance, you started to do more frequent runs, or maybe more intense runs, and this thing just starts to kind of get it crowds your smaller toes. And the reason that happens, I can back up here again, you can see most of me too, but there we go. Anyway, so if your foot kind of flattens out a little bit, and it's fairly mobile, my foot is, I can make that arch, right? And that's pretty good. But if I didn't know how to do that, if I didn't have lower extremity strength and my hip wasn't very strong, it would just flatten out. And so what happens when you flatten that out is that if you can see what's kind of going on, as you do this, your toe, your big toe, it tends to start to crowd your lesser toes. Now, that's excessive, and I get that. But what ends up happening most of the time, if your foot flattens out, is that as that big toe starts to crowd that way, there's tension on that ligament right there, the ligament on the inside of your big toe. And as there's a pull on that, there's a bone spur that forms. And as a bone spur forms, there's less joint mobility. And what ends up happening is if the big toe is kind of going off in one direction a little bit, but also has to extend as you're running, you're making it do two things at the same time. And so it just runs out of range pretty fast and starts to kind of get towards end range and starts to spurring. And then when a spur happens, you start to have pain. And when the pain happens, you have this inflammation, and then it just kind of continues a cycle where you start having pain on the inside of your big toe. And most of the time, it's because the foot is pronating a little bit too much. Now you can gain it, you can control that with lower extremity strengthening to a point, but that takes a while. So most of the time, this might sound familiar if you've been watching any of my lives here regarding the stuff on the inside of the foot and ankle. The one thing you want to start doing is making sure you're at least in a neutral, a stability shoe, not a neutral shoe, a stability shoe. The ones that tend to do a really good job with making sure that they do the right thing with technology and all that stuff. Brooks and New Balance. The other ones tend to maybe fall apart a little bit quicker. As far as my experience in the past. Sometimes you might want to add, another, maybe a carbon fiber insert there, or Sole Soft Tech tends to do a pretty good job too. With a, it's got a moldable kind of a black bottom to the sole of the insert, and you can just. Sometimes you can throw that in the oven. I don't suggest it, but you can throw it in the oven. What's up, Captain? Good to see you, man. You can throw it in the oven at like 180 degrees, put it in your shoe, and put your foot in there for like, I think 2 minutes or something, and it will mold to your foot. However, I think just putting it in there all on its own without doing all that stuff in the oven ends up doing a pretty good job at, helping out what your foot needs. Now on top of that, what could be even more helpful, and I've mentioned it before here, is those Hoka shoes, those 1-1 shoes, Hoka. Some people really don't like them, and I get it. They start to kind of wonder, a little bit about what's going on with the foot, ankle, lower leg when you put those shoes on. But I got to tell you, they really allow for an ease of progression. And if people want to get back on the road and run, without changing your gait and going to a minimalist shoe, which is also probably helpful, it just tends to kind of complicate things a little bit. But if you want to have a go-between between being fairly pain-free, if not completely pain-free, and not being quite in the shoe you want, a Hoka, rocker bottom kind of shoe is actually a pretty good go-between for a treatment program. Maybe not to stay in it forever unless you have really awful patellofemoral joints and some other stuff, but a really good go-between between being able to run and being pain-free in a Hoka, but still having maybe a little bit of pain in like a Brooks or a New Balance, or your typical kind of slightly more flatter bottom soled shoe with a little bit of a obviously a positive heel to ball of the foot ratio. I get a little bit off there, but bottom line is Hokas can allow for some really smooth progression again, in this case. And it's something that I talk about as a treatment for people that just simply want to get out and run and not be in pain. So if you can do that, they can enjoy running and they're not in pain like everybody kind of wants to probably be in, it's a good shot. It's a good start. And so I would go for at least a stability shoe. And most of the time, this is the treatment again. I've done this a number of times on these lives, particularly for the inside of the foot and ankle, and a little bit of the Achilles tendonitis if it's bothering you. But so the big toe, this is a good kind of a test. But really almost all the time when the big toe is crowding the small toes, it's because you're either walking with your feet toed out a good bit, or your feet are flattening out a little bit more there, and your big toe is crowding your smaller toes because it just wants to be elevated more. And so it ends up being really helpful. Let me do this again. Okay. Anyway, so pulling your foot down and out. That's the direction, right? Tag the inside of your foot right there. Inside of your foot and the ball of your foot, really right there. The inside and bottom. Just lay down the first like inch or so, and then stretch out the rest of it about maybe 75-ish, 50 to 75%. The rest of it, and then the bottom, you'll just kind of tack down again at the very end of that as well. And then most of the time I'll go a little bit longer with the second strip and do exactly the same thing. And just tack down the first inch or so. Stretch it out a good bit again, you know, maybe 50, 75-ish. And lay down the last portion again. And so what you've done there, I don't know if you guys have been watching before, but what you've done there is that you've created a little bit more of an arch. And so what ends up happening is that instead of your foot, I'll just so you guys can kind of just see a little bit more. But what ends up happening is that the foot ends up staying more lined up. So when you progress over the toes, particularly over the big toe, when you progress over, when you're jogging or running, you go right over the big toe instead of your foot really crashing and going and crowding the smaller toes. Now that's excessive with the knee. I know the knee doesn't do that normally when we run, but the thing is, after tens of thousands of cycles of running, after tens of thousands of cycles of running, you don't need a whole lot of crowding of your smaller toes to really start to have a pain point sometimes on the inside of where your big toe is, kind of right along and through here. Sometimes on the top, but mostly on the inside and maybe a little bit on the top, because that's what ends up happening. That's where the stretching occurs, right there, and then you end up irritating the area. You get a little bit of spurring, you stretch out the ligaments, get a little bit of spurring, and the cycle continues. So, anyway, I hope this helps a little bit. And if you guys want any more tips, by all means, go ahead and instant message me or comment here. And if you want, go ahead and get in my group. I share a lot of this stuff, pain points, foot and ankle, lower leg, knee, hip, thigh, calf, back, the whole bit. And by now there's probably tons of videos. Running Motivation and Training League is the name of the group. So go ahead and hop in and have at it. You know, check out the videos, and hope to keep putting out good content for you guys. Yeah, you guys have a great night. And just want to say thanks for everybody who's hopped on here tonight. I know it's late. Tim, thanks for hopping on, man. Ian, Almari, Karen, and of course, David, love you, man, and Marlene. So anyways, I'll just wave out to all you guys, and just thanks for coming on and trying to give you guys some value as you're running, and trying to help you maybe stay relatively injury-free, or at least get ahead of it, so that if you ever need to go see somebody, maybe you can look at the videos and get ahead of a problem that might be a little bit of an issue that you can deal with a lot quicker than waiting for weeks to see somebody, and maybe months, and maybe not seeing the right people. So anyhow, give me a shout out if you want any help, and be glad to help you guys. Take care, and God bless everybody out there, and Lord, heal our land in Jesus' name. And Mike, thanks for hopping on. Just got done, and hopefully I can add some value to you guys, your guys' day, and your life. So take care. Have a great night.